Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us on this January 13th, 2026. We are focused on a Digital World Town Hall meeting as well as a General Council meeting that occurs every week. We've been doing it since 2022, and we're at 2026 now. The agenda goes as follows. We will have an opening prayer. Today we'll have it by John Valentine. Then we'll have a quick review as to progress, particularly reporting out based upon goals for 2026. This will actually be the first week we'll report out. Last week we reviewed it for the first time, as this is the second week of the year 2026. We'll have a general Q&A. We do have a couple folks that are brand new and with us. We have a crew from all around the world, lots of countries, lots of different time zones, and lots of different hearts that are all aligned. We're grateful for people that join, not only physically or virtually online, but also those that are listening at maybe after the fact. Thank you for taking the time. This work is very important. As you know, we believe, and I personally really believe, that things are created spiritually before they're created physically. And maybe we just see with our eyes in a certain way physically, but there's a lot more to it. There's a lot more to it. I would ask you, how do these cell phones work? Like there's crystals inside of them and frequencies and bands, and how does that really work? It's actually really a simple thing if you kind of look at it from the perspective that we're alluding to here. So things can be not seen, but they can be understood. And as we can see the physical layer, there's this element in between, this digital layer that we're seeing basically align and come together. So we're going to recognize that and also recognize the hand that is in it and start this meeting with a word of prayer. So John, if you could kick us off, that'd be greatly appreciated.
Okay. Our dear Heavenly Father, we are grateful for this opportunity to meet together as residents of Earth and thy sons and thy daughters. We're grateful to be able to move forward thy work here on Earth and to be able to contribute in meaningful ways so that we may be able to help humankind move forward on a good path that is positive and uplifting, that will bring us closer to thee, and ask for thy direction and for thy spirit to follow us as we commune together and discuss technical and other parts of that path, and ask for these things and do so in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen. I know that there may be a lot of different faiths and a lot of different beliefs, and this isn't one that just kind of pushes one religion or political belief at all. As a matter of fact, it's very neutral. And so I would just throw it out. Whoever wants to offer the closing prayer by the time we're done, please feel free to just raise your hand and let us know. Again, there's not any kind of denomination or particular faith there. It's just that we believe that there is a creator and there's a creation process. And that's really an element of what we're involved with. Earlier today, I was on the phone with some folks from the Vatican, as well as the Catholic Church, as well as a third-party company that basically is building, get this, retirement homes on church property that's been leased to them to build a form of community with this older citizen, demographic. It's actually starting out of Arizona, and they've done some amazing work, but it's very interesting to see. This last week, there's also been some similar type dialogues, very different, but it's interesting to see. We've historically not touched a lot of different religious-based environments as this work has started, but today is kind of one of those that we'll touch on parts and pieces of it. So for those that may be listening for the first time, we're grateful that you're here. We're grateful for those co-hosts that are with us. That helps the meeting to just go and flow. This is recorded globally. It's stored in 5 different locations. Some of them will delete it, and that's okay. We believe that a private membership association, especially in the digital world, provides a level of freedom that we just give away. We literally just give away. Some of the things we're talking about may be forward-looking, and the simple reality of what we're focused on is basically you've got secret combinations within different parts of the world, and they work together to take over governments and then monetary systems. And since this last week kicked off, we've seen Venezuela be attacked. I shouldn't say attacked. Venezuela basically, well, like other people might say that, but there's some action down in Venezuela. There's some action in Greenland. There's some action with the United States of America coming out of NATO, but that's basically what's happening right now. So this is like a time capsule so folks can understand what is actually transpiring in the world. And when we look at those governments taking over other governments, we're seeing it. We've seen it within Russia and Ukraine. We're starting to see it and have seen it within China, not only Hong Kong, but also Taiwan, and then the United States now with Greenland, basically justifying different things. I think it's really important to note that this whole conversation, since we started the meeting, may feel like it ties to religion or it ties to politics, and it doesn't. But it's really important to recognize that there are different ecosystems out there that are in the private as well as in the public. And understanding and delineating between the private and the public really sets the stage where decentralization can actually enable the private. And what we'll be talking a lot about is how we're working to enable those decentralized systems so that private environments can actually be realized. For those that may not be aware, the digital world has a documentation system that is being stood up as we speak. It is a very advanced system, much more advanced than what we've had historically. Inside of the documentation system might tie a code or repositories or SDKs or even enablement of different AI-based development environments. So if you can develop on identity and then payments with existing app infrastructure and stores on open source technology, there's some crazy stuff that can come from that. And you'll see that in the next couple of meetings. When we look at the digital world, we basically are focusing on layers. We're talking about standards, life, identity, storage, payments, assets, services, applications, experiences, governance, and we won't talk about this one just yet. And then there's a couple different economic models that layer on. They're not actually layer 11, 12, they're actually appendices that stops at 11 or at 10, excuse me. So basically with that being said, we will be digging into a couple of the different advancements. Primarily, one of the big ones is around life with the life protocol and all of the details that basically tie into this environment. It's a big step. It's a massive undertaking. In the reality of it, it's actually really simple. But one of the big things is how this life environment ties to the Utah Life Pilot and how the Utah Life Pilot actually leverages laws. So there's already 6 laws that have actually been passed into Parliament. These are actually these laws here from the Privacy Act, Digital Choice Act, Private Membership Association Act, currency. So this is silver and gold. Those are all passed completely into law. This House bill and this Senate bill are basically working through elements of what we call SETI, State Endorsed Digital Identity. And right now is a very key time as to what we're dealing with within not only the state of Utah. Why? Because things went hard on Friday, so it was locked. Friday was the last day. Today is Tuesday, and tomorrow, Wednesday, is actually when a lot of the legislation hearings and process to get state-endorsed digital identity, the SETI environment going. Now, some people may listen to that and say, digital identity, that's not good. That sounds bad. That feels bad. And I would absolutely emphatically agree with you. But it's important to note that what this is actually something that is controlled by the individual, not the state. Right here, number 1. This is massive, like here.
Citizen control. Individuals, not the state, own and control their identity data and the cryptographic keys used to secure it. They provide explicit consent for every transaction, deciding precisely what information is shared and with whom.
That is a really, really big thing. And they're doing it based upon standards where the governments take a back seat and let the individuals actually own their own identity based upon cryptographic keys. This last week, they've worked a lot with Apple and some other environments and helping them to understand, at least I hope this is the case, that the cryptographic keys, and this is why this work is so important, it cannot start with an Apple ID to then tie to a cryptographic key. It has to start with cryptographic key to then tie to Apple ID or Google ID or whatever else. But that cryptographic key, this first sentence of this document that is 31 pages is all that really matters. Like literally citizen controlled. It's them, their own identity first, and they actually own their own keys. and then wraps into other identity systems. So with that being said, there's other things, key rotation, key restoration, tons of things that can actually be layered on top of this, primarily because of how the architectures work. And Sam Smith, wonderful, brilliant man, ahead of his, well, probably not ahead of anything. He's right on time, but massive, massive work. State endorsed digital identity. The state of Utah is leading the charge on this. And what it will do to enable other systems, particularly this Digital Choice Act. By the way, we met with attorneys yesterday and attorneys today. The Digital Choice Act basically enables everyone to get their own identity back. Not necessarily delete and mandate, but they can actually get their data back. And if they don't get it back, there's consequences, and those consequences come into play July 1st, 2026. Massive, massive reality. And what the state of Utah is standing up to do is just disruptive. And if people can basically get their head around this and understand what this really means for the future of humanity, we're talking about the counterbalance to digital ID. We're talking about the opposite of what digital ID is within other parts of the world. I'll be specific. Within Nigeria, if you literally don't get a digital ID, which is an app you download, and it ties to the government system, which is the opposite of what state-endorsed digital identity is doing within the state of Utah, they literally said your cell phones don't work anymore. The government told the cellular providers, turn the cell phones off if they don't have this app on. Literally, you know what happened there? Fires, riots, hacking. They literally pushed back on it 2 or 3 times. Do I think it actually still got implemented? Probably. Then South Asia, it wasn't cell phones this time, it was bank accounts. If you had money in a bank, literally they would lock it up and said, you can't access this until you download an app and you link it to your actual government ID. Then fast forward over to the UK, you cannot work without digital ID. You know, there's literally different parts and pieces. I want to say Minnesota started implementing some crazy stuff. I won't get into that right now, but it's important to understand that what's happening in the state of Utah, and particularly we're working with this Utah Life pilot, which is something that is relatively new, but it's taking these decentralized systems and enabling it so people can actually own their own identity and own their own data. And then it go cross jurisdiction, and particularly cross jurisdiction within the digital world. So a lot of the stuff we're talking about is actually really key and into the same environment. So with that being said, by the way, these are actually the recordings of the meetings that we're having. So they always get recorded, they always get streamed. And so people can actually go back, not only go through and see the transparency around how things evolve, but we can see how this actually transpired. And maybe in a decade or two, it might actually mean something. Some of the other things that have really happened this last week isn't just around the documentation system, but the actual life systems that have actually gone live. Let's see if I can find one of them. So this is actually one which is called Life Reserve, which primarily ties to a basket of assets that instead of being kind of out there with other digital currencies, this gold line basically follows that of Bitcoin. So if you haven't tracked with Bitcoin or kind of what's going on there, then you've also got cash. So you've got cash, you've got the S&P, you've got basically what we call this Life Reserve, which is actually this blue line. There's actually one line that's actually off here, but you can see how these things will actually tie together, and you can see the different assets as well. So you'll be able to kind of see what's the value, what's the assets, whether it's gold eagles or silver eagles or gold bullion or silver bullion. You'll also start seeing us starting to track some of these assets that have basically been put in holdings, which we'll talk a little bit more about as time goes on. We'll also be able to, hopefully by next meeting, we'll be able to report out the balance sheet and P&L for some of these types of assets across really all of the Clear companies and into what we call Clear Holdings. Clear Holdings is basically pushing to leverage public centralized funds to build private decentralized systems. So if you're not familiar with what Clear Holdings is, it's clear.holdings. You can take a peek at that. You can see the different companies. A lot of this stuff is massively forward-looking, and it actually plans on going through and actually doing its own listing within a public environment that actually ties to assets. Well, and there's actually $5 billion we're trying to raise for a particular use case, which is a whole nother conversation, but a lot of advancements there. We wrapped up the 2025 round. So that was 10 million at a $100 million pre-money valuation. And then moving into 2026, 50 million at a $500 million valuation. And then we plan to basically right before the actual projected IPO, we'll go through a $250 million raise. Again, we're trying to get, this is a $2.5 billion valuation, but by the time we go through the IPO process, we hope to have 5 billion in value that's created so that we can strategically pull a lot of the stuff that the Clear companies have been doing digitally for the digital world into a physical environment. And this will make a lot of sense to you once we actually go through this process. So this is a 3-year, 36-month process. We're already well into it, almost a year, and grateful for all those wonderful people, namely Craig Higginson, for stepping up and just delivering. I know there's a lot going on. Life goes on, health, people, kids, grandkids, grandparents, death, life. And I'm just grateful for all those people that are there. They're you that are here, that you're listening, that you're on board, for all of those that have helped to build the different Clear companies to enable this digital world. And even some of you that may be involved and some of you that may be involved long ago and are coming back and just engaging. We're arms are open, and we're grateful for the opportunities to build together, to work together. For those of you that may have not seen this in the past, and I wish I could mask stuff real time, but you can literally purchase assets real time with the current fiat system, so USD, into the decentralized systems. So you can go from a USD environment to a DUSD environment seamlessly. Like literally, let's say that someone wants to actually transfer or purchase, and it's not just one asset. You could actually buy multiple different assets, and they have their own fair market value decentralized exchange attached to it at real time. But you literally just pull it right out of the fiat system. So you pop in a credit card and it literally pulls it right into a particular wallet. I'm going to log out of this one. I don't know who that is. So those are two pretty big updates around really what's happening within SETI, State Endorsed Digital Identity, within the Utah pilot, within the documentation systems within the digital world, and the scoping and the speccing and the layers, and then also within the Life Reserve launch. And there's going to be a lot of effort that's historically been put into it. We're bumping in. Today was a pretty rough day for me from a couple different perspectives, but we will see where that ends up based upon alignment and hearts, really. So, yeah, with that being said, that's basically a simple report out. Some of the things that are currently under development is the deposit and withdrawal elements that actually ties to, and I failed to actually go through this because I quit a couple slides early. For those of you that may be new to this, what we're talking about is basically setting up a digital ID by getting 12 words, downloading an app, getting 12 words, and then you can basically transact. And when you transact, you get derived keys from everything that you do that connect the digital and physical worlds, literally through the derived keys, through the decentralized identity, and then the payments. It brings it all together. And this is the stuff that we historically focused on last year, which we're retiring. So the exchanges, we ended at 12. Our goal was 7. The phones, the homes, whole nother conversation, especially with what happened today, autos, and then community, moving it into an overall arching message of, by the end of this year, the world needs to know that they actually have a choice. Typically, people basically provide some form of value, whether it's through consulting or employment or some other way where they get value or give value and get value. And then what do? They go to a bank. And that bank gives them an account number in their bank as long as they conform to certain laws. And what this is all about is the individual can become their own bank. They can own themselves. So they can actually deposit it with themselves in this different layered architecture within the digital world. We're going to launch this environment called this Life Vault that then ties to the ownership capabilities through the Utah Life Digital Choice Act. And the Utah Life basically as a parallel system to the existing systems where the individual can actually own their own identity. There's some autos elements, and then there's some life elements. And this is basically going to tie to some privatized communities. And these are the goals for 2026. The measurements, the lead measures, the lag measures have not been defined yet, but those are basically some of the goals. I'm going to jump into a couple different things. We did sign a deal in Q4 with a key strategic partner, and a lot of that will come out. There's actually going to be a press release that will be launched. For those of you that are not aware with what's going on with gold and silver, a big day was yesterday. And we're going to see a lot more growth. We're going to see a lot more, primarily because banks now have to actually do certain things with gold and silver, where historically they could have just done them with anything that they create out of a dollar, which is going to change a lot of things. But we're grateful to be able to work with some of these amazing folks. This is actually going to go live this next week, and we'll talk about parts and pieces of what they do and how it ties in, as well as how the balance sheets and assets all tie together as well. This is an actual app that we're working on, and it has services that are built into it that's unique from the existing life apps. So it ties the different layers all together. One of the big new layers is communications, what you can kind of see here. So there's actually going to be a decentralized communication system. Imagine Signal, but that's what's going to be added to the life app. So you get your own identity, you get your own payments, and now you get your own communications in an environment that's very, very stable, solid, and integrated. We won't talk about assets and starting businesses and properties and the other Clear apps. For those of you that are on Apple or Google or Samsung, you can roll things out. For those of you that are just with the Life app, for those that are on the ClearPhone environment, you can actually deploy 16 different apps that basically are private to you. Your photos, your calendar, your contacts, your messages, what you search, everything is custom to you, unique to you. And imagine by the end of the year, if you remember that last wig, number 5 is actually AI that runs on the phone in a private architecture, not centralized, based upon your own data. So this year, we're going to help people to understand they can get their own data. Not only can they get their own data, but then they can actually own their own data. So they own their own assets, they own their own identity, they own their own data. And then you start tying into this digital ecosystem where there's other apps that build up a parallel system, especially through AI, that can basically enable the individual to own their own identity, data, and artificial intelligence system and pass it from generation to generation. There's certificates, there's endorsements, there's permits. You want to start a business, it's really seamless. Typically, you'd have to do this within the web environment, but we're actually rolling it out on the actual app itself. And then other assets. You're going to see a flood of new assets within this quarter, Q1 2026. And you'll see some other assets that will actually tie to it, and then the stabilization and backing of those assets in a real world based environment that's 100% redeemable. It doesn't play the games of currencies or cryptos or commodities. It's literally, when I say commodities, I'm also talking about equities. Some of the other things that's exciting is we're working with a new group of folks. As a matter of fact, I'll show you some photos. For those of you that actually have always wanted to come to Utah, now is a really good time to do it. So these are some folks, you're going to start seeing more of them. And next week on the 20th, particularly the 21st, you will see about 5 different companies. For those of you that were not involved in the Deal Flow show, you're going to see elements of that basically here in Utah as we light up and we start building out judges and founders that can actually use this type of business creation, equity creation to raise funds. And we're going to be doing it on stage within the Highstar environment with some folks like this guy's literally gone around and built out, I want to say 15 different shows in the last 2 years and helped tons of different companies raise funds. And really, I don't know if you've ever heard of SHIT Pitch, but that's basically what they're doing. But there's 3 really good individuals that are coming together to basically make this all happen. Jumping back, I don't know if you're familiar with what's going on, but this last week, The rumors have it, and I'm sure who knows if this is real, but it's been validated a couple different ways. But XAI is rolling out within governmental systems. There's some interesting stuff that you should basically try to understand that actually ties to a lot of that. So with that being said, those are pretty big dialogue, but imagine founders coming together on a stage in Utah and HighStar. And when people come to Utah, they can basically join this private membership association that ties to the governance, not just of SETI, but particularly of this digital ID system, this particular one right here, this Digital Choice Act. So you can literally become a part of that. You don't physically have to be a resident of the state of Utah to actually get the protections and provisions of this Digital Choice Act. That is massive. It's literally 2026. This is going to be a massive shift, and a lot of folks don't see it. I'll give you an example. GDPR within the European Union is probably the closest thing to it. And when that went into effect, basically the world saw a couple things. They saw these little pop-up boxes that says, are you okay? Do you give your consent for us to track your data? And most people are like, okay, I'll do it, and they don't care. But without the ability for the user to actually consent, they're violating GDPR, particularly in the European Union, goes after a lot of these companies. The first big bill was $5 billion to Facebook. There's currently $200 billion that's being attached and targeted within the Apple environment. Other folks that actually paid these fines, Amazon, Microsoft, there was Google. I don't know if they actually ended up paying stuff. They did some other stuff with the Attorney General within Utah. Marriott, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, there's some elements there I won't get into. And then Amazon. So I don't know if I mentioned them earlier, but you basically have a lot of the big companies, a lot of smaller environments as well, but there's a legal precedent. So I'll give you an example of, remember back in the day when I was born, and probably most of you on the call, we actually had this thing called smoking. They were smoking in public, on a plane, in a restaurant, in a car, until one organization, one individual, took a case for two different flight stewardess that were saying, we've got cancer. They verified they got cancer. They verified they were on planes. They verified there was smoke. And so there was secondhand smoke. They proved it. And then everything cascaded from there. You start seeing a very different shift. Imagine if a lot of these centralized systems that just take people's identity just because they can, because people give it away to them for convenience. You know, a bowl of porridge and some convenience, and your identity literally goes. And this is a way to be able to get it back. This is a massive way to be able to get it back. Imagine if you actually lit up. I'll see if I can scroll down as fast as I can. I think this is way down here. Imagine if you could actually look at your different data sets. So if you looked at your password manager, how many accounts do you think you have? Maybe 300, and maybe 150 of them that you care about. And if you send out 150 notices to different source data providers, maybe it's Facebook, maybe it's social platforms, maybe it's banks, maybe it's health, maybe it's phone records, you name it. But when you send the request out and you don't get your data back, there's actually some accountability that can be held there. But you've got to be able to have some structure on how you want to get it back. What's the storage format? What's the time frame? What's the notice process? And a lot of this can be built around a process that people can get into this environment. And the next thing you know, you can start requesting your data back. And the next thing you know, you can actually be a part of the solution. When I say solution, a lot of you may be saying, what the heck is this guy talking about? I mean, solution to what? There's really not a problem. This was sent to me yesterday by a wonderful human being on this earth, and just grateful for her involvement in life. And I'm going to play just the real intro to it. It's actually an hour long, actually an hour, almost 2 hours long, but I highly recommend you listen to it. You watch it. They've done a very good job as it gets going. So here we go. Just first couple minutes.
Brave
So this is the problem that the digital world is actually solving, just to give you clarity.
New World is a fantastic parable about the dehumanization of human beings. In the negative utopia described in my story, man has been subordinated to his own inventions. Science, technology, social organization, these things have ceased to serve man. They have become his masters.
Aldous Huxley's novel portrays a dystopian future under the dictatorship of a world state, where every aspect of human life is controlled, from laboratory creation to the grave. He described the story as fantasy, but later wrote, "The prophecies made in 1931 are coming true much sooner than I thought they would. The nightmare of total organization has emerged and is now awaiting us, just around the next corner."
With the rise of brain-computer interfaces and biometric sensors and so forth, all the bodies, all the brains would be connected together to a network, and you won't be able to survive if you're disconnected from the net.
All life on Earth is going to be radically changed.
It's a fusion of the physical, the digital, and the biological world. It's changing who we are.
These people have gotten to the point now where they are openly anti-human.
Everything will be monitored. The environmental consequences of every human action. They cannot happen without digital ID.
Once the digital ID is in place, it's game over for humanity.
So I really urge you to watch this, the agenda. It really spells out all this yakking that we've been talking about with these secret combinations when we kick off these meetings. We literally always go through, there are different combinations around the world: oil, healthcare, finance, you name it, pharmaceuticals, you name it. There's tons of them, and how they actually intelligently work together behind the scenes. You may think that this stuff is just not real. I personally dedicated my life to it after going to Davos in Switzerland at the World Economic Forum and seeing how organized these secret combinations are. Seeing these are humans that you would think would actually care about humanity. But when they're in an environment, when they're untouchable, and a lot of folks, if you know the names, you probably are not even on to the right folks that are behind it. And I won't go into the details there, but just know that it's very real, but there is a solution to it. Decentralization is a true and correct principle in our beings. Through a telescope or through a microscope, you can see it. You can see it actually working, and how these types of systems, particularly systems that bring folks together. When we talk about life apps or life protocols or different jurisdictions that actually roll out these things and legally make them viable. And that's why we don't have another year to wait. Like literally, if what happens starting tomorrow, Wednesday, the 17th, no, the 15th, no, where are we at? The 14th. So the 14th of, wow. Anyways, wow. It's a beautiful time to be alive. It's a beautiful time to have eyes open. I'm grateful for people like you that show up, for the audience that's here, for folks that build videos like this agenda, for folks that are actually starting to see what the core root is, so that really a solution can actually be manifested. And I believe that what the digital world has been building, what these councils have been convening on, it all ties to a solution that is a parallel system for the future of humanity. So thank you for being here. Thank you for joining. This is a Q&A session. I'll turn the time over. If anybody's got any feedback on the things that we just went through, or if there's anything you want to add to it or contribute, question, verify, validate, argue with, it's okay. This is your time. Let's counsel together. Let's talk together. Even if there's stuff that you see here that may be premature or maybe a base off center or maybe not a right, let's talk through it. Let's question it. Let's course correct. But I will go ahead and stop talking and turn the time over to the audience that's patiently waiting. Time is now yours.
Okay, I have a question, Michael. Okay, so let's say I have a bakery in the digital world, and I need flour. I need to buy some flour. So if I don't have a real ID, what I've been hearing and seeing is that we won't exist as a human being, as a person. They pretty much erase us. So how would I buy my flour?
So what I would actually liken that to is in the United States of America and other parts of the world, there's a private membership association that buys in mass really good product, and they've got some competitive advantages and barriers. And one of the best places to buy flour, actually, and that's Costco. And if you remember, Costco was one of those places that said, if you're going to come shop here, you must social distance. You must wear a mask. And they can choose to shut down. They can choose to reject services to people. I remember one holiday at a prior company that a couple of folks here started, Direct Point. We actually shut the store down on a Saturday and let all the team members just go for a shopping spree, right? But the point is they can make up their own rules because they're protected by private membership association law. And they can actually say, you're not welcome here. And if we're the only ones that have flour, for instance, there was a large time when they were the only ones that had toilet paper, right? So what's also interesting is I actually went to a place called Ballerina Farms, which is actually a wonderful gal who was a ballerina in New York, who moved to Utah and gave up her shoes, hung them up to just basically be a mom and a wife and a steward over cooking and making food and growing things that were actually valuable. And what I mean by that is real protein, real meat, real tasty food that people actually felt good on when they actually ate it. And the world listened. So where I went today, this one lady made a difference. She has over 10 million followers on Instagram, tons on Facebook, and she's literally making a difference when it comes to the alternative path of how things are procured, how they're actually grown. And I believe the answer to your question and the answer to all of these secret combinations, when I say decentralization, this is a good example and a use point. Just grow product locally and buy product locally with a local currency and have that local currency tied to a system that is completely redeemable in real time and actually is backed by real economies, real ecosystems, real people that add value and they contribute, whether it's growing food. There's a book that talked about by your sweat of your brow, you shall actually do it. So, yeah. Anyway, so I hope that answers your question around, we have to create parallel systems to be able to make it through the centralized control that's coming. I personally believe the combination of identity, payments, AI will link together and be wrapped by health. And when they start understanding the genome of really DNA, and if you got a COVID test, you're actually given a DNA sampling and linking it to who you were. You may think I'm just nuts, but that's really what they were doing. So these tests were actually a point of taking swabs, and that's the same way that they would actually take your DNA sequences. As a matter of fact, a lot of the different DNA companies, 23andMe and Ancestry DNA, they would actually do it in an even limited way where you just spit in a tube, send it in, and you're done. This actually gets way up in there, so you're getting more sequences, if you will. Now, granted, you have to do certain sequencing and you put them onto these little fobs and you pull them out. But the point being is, I believe that identity, payments, AI will link together with health wrapping around it, and we'll use it as a justification of longevity and better life and better quality of life and longer life. And I would argue that, this last week was a pretty difficult week, and I'm numb to a lot of things. It's been a very hard week on multiple levels, both personally and then also to see loved ones get diagnosis that they're terminally not going to be with us. And as hard as that is, particularly this woman. You know, she's a mother to me. She's raised me. She's loved me, and you know the same thing that Pate. So basically, I won't even go into the points that I was trying to make because it'll just go down the wrong path. I don't know that I'll be able to go through it, but we all have a limited time here, and the work that we do and the things that we do matter. Every day matters, and we all are going to be able to go through this inevitable reality of taking our last breath. But what we do in between that tombstone date of when we're born and when we're deceased, that dash really matters. And I'm confident that the work that we're doing here, even though it may be small groups of folks that come together, and maybe it's one simple thing at a time, kind of like that meeting today. It was like, hey, we welcome you to build your products as a part of this private community. And when you do it, we can actually then stand up and stand against this digital ecosystem that is public and wants to control everything. So it becomes this private versus public conundrum that fights. And I don't mean to sound negative, but this is a war. This is a full-on war. It may just be a spiritual thing, but when you look at it, for instance, you know, just this morning, U.S. is pulling out of NATO. At least that's what the headlines say. I don't know. I haven't verified any of it. And we don't need to necessarily worry about the minutia and the details. As a matter of fact, a lot of it's just by design. But if we come together, and there could be an online community like this, it could be a physical community, it could be communities that actually tie to jurisdictions that actually care about things like state endorsed digital identity. This state endorsed, if we literally get this through starting tomorrow, it can change the trajectory for humanity. And it's that important. Like for me, I would have loved to just taken some time off and just spent some special days. But it's been this year has been an amazing year. It's only 2 weeks in,